Well, hello, you amazing, beautiful people, and welcome back to another anime reaction video. So, it is the spooky season. Things are spooky. There's bats in the air flying around doing bat stuff. What does a bat actually do? I'm not really sure. In movies, they kind of eat people and turn into vampires, but in real life, do they do anything? Especially bats in the UK. I see them, but I don't really know what they do. What do they eat? What is the point in a bat? Anyway, there's bats. It's Halloween, and I figured we should do some horror anime related videos. So if you got any recommendations for horror anime related videos, put them in the comment section. If you're subscribed and you leave a comment, whichever comment gets the most likes, that will be some reactions that I'll record, all right? But you have to be subscribed, you get a little sticker next to your name, and only subscribers' recommendations go through to the reaction recommendations. So subscribe, leave a comment, what Halloween anime reactions you'd like to see, but I'm gonna stop talking. Shout out Mother's Basement for this video that we're about to jump into, and it is the problem with horror anime.
No limits to what anime can do, what it can be. Anime can elicit so many different and powerful emotional responses, but one that it really seems to struggle with is fear.
Yeah, true. Oh,
don't get me wrong, anime is chock full of horror imagery. Body horror elements abound in action joints like Full Metal Alchemist, Akira, Attack on Titan, and Parasite. Monsters are common story fodder in the anime world, and plenty of shows exude a dark, twisted atmosphere, but I can count the number of anime that have actually scared me as an adult on one hand, and the number that have actually left me with a lingering feeling of dread at any age on one finger. That one would be Shiki, hands down the best horror anime that I've ever seen, potentially not counting this season, but we'll get to that. And even it didn't leave the same kind of lasting impression on me as most of the horror media that I've experienced.
I say this so much all the time because horror is my favorite genre. I fucking love horror. I love it so much. I'm obsessed with horror. That entire shelf used to be filled with horror figurines before we started YouTube. Like, I love horror. And I always wanted a horror anime. There isn't any good recommendations or good anyone. And the thing is, it doesn't need to be scary. There isn't any like slasher anime. I've said this before. Why isn't there just like a Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, slasher anime story, you know? Like, why is there not an anime where someone in a town is a killer, people are mysteriously dying, and we're trying to work out who the killer is? Why does that not exist?
I still remember the opening cutscene and the first death screen of Resident Evil 2. I can still picture the chestburster scene from Alien and the halls of the Nostromo, and I can still vividly remember the stomach jaws from The Thing. And even if we break away from stuff that got me when I was young, there's the projector scene from It, the tall goon lurching down the hallway and It Follows. Pretty much every page turn from a Junji Ito book. Good visual horror has a way of sticking with you. But no image from Shiki haunts me like that. It does a good job of building atmosphere and delivering on scary moments, and it can be pretty damn gruesome, but it's ultimately the ideas behind the story and the way that they're conveyed that make it so terrifying.
It is strange because Japanese horror movies are very good. Like, I've seen a lot of very strong and terrifying Japanese horror movies. And there's a lot of, like, scary history in a lot of Japanese culture. So why does anime just not deliver the same way?
Not the imagery that it presents. I've got to spoil the show's twist to fully explain why. So if you'd like to see it for yourself and be fully spooked by it, skip to the timestamp on screen.
I'm gonna skip. I do want to watch Shiki. If he's literally saying it's the only horror anime that he like loves, then there's no way that I can have it spoiled. I want to watch it, so I am gonna skip. I don't want to have it spoiled. I don't. If you would like to see what he's saying, I'll leave a link to the Problem of Anime on Mother's Basement's video description in the description. Link in the description, so you can watch it for yourself and find out.
This show is incredibly effective at getting inside your head. That ultimately comes down to the strength of its writing, which it inherited from the original novel it was based on, along with some strong sound design, not really its direction or its visuals. It's a little bit too silly and cartoony looking to leave a lasting traumatic impression with its gore, or even to land a really good jump scare. And that is, I think, the biggest hurdle faced by just about every horror anime, and most animated works in general, really. Animation, by its very nature, necessitates stylization and reduction in complexity. It's a lot harder to make an immaculately detailed facsimile of a real object move in a convincing manner than an illustrative representation of that object, and it takes a lot more time and money. So, practically speaking, you're not going to see anything approaching realism in anime, especially not TV anime. And while that's...
I do agree to some extent. Like, you do have high budget anime, but anime studios aren't necessarily going to put money into a horror anime, so you're not really going to see that much. Like big anime studios. Like, it's too risky and they don't succeed as much. There's too many problems. But I will say, you don't need it to be realistic. You don't. It's the atmosphere and the tension. Like, you could do it with some fucking Season 4 DxD animation. It just needs to be done right.
It's not a problem for most...
I would fucking love to direct, like, a fucking horror anime or horror anything. I would love it. I don't think I'll ever get the chance in my life, but I've thought about, like, the horror movies and horror stories a million damn times, man.
Anime, it really hamstrings horror. And to see why, you need look no further than last year's disastrous Junji Ito collection. In his video about the series, Super Eyepatch Wolf highlights many great examples of how the oversimplification of Ito's painstakingly detailed style robs his art of its power to frighten. He also concludes that some sort of production failing or lack of faith in the project from those in charge is what ultimately doomed the anime, but on reflection, I think that any animated adaptation of Ito's work will face similar hurdles. Junji Ito's manga have the intricate quality of a scientific illustration, which is what...
Is this the same guy that there was an anime of recently that people were kicking off like a horror anime?
...gives his uncanny creations their air of organic believability. But those drawings can take Ito hours upon hours to finish. An animator earning a few dollars per frame is not going to spend that kind of time on even a still image from a show. The Ito collection's problems are not unique to it. Even vastly more impressive anime still suffer from similar issues. PA Works Another is one of the most lavishly produced horror anime ever made. It's a good-looking show across the board, but it puts particular care and detail into its death scenes. They're animated and rendered with as much fidelity as could ever be reasonably expected of a TV anime. And they're clearly intended to be horrifying, but they're just not. If anything, they're hilarious. The simplified style of the show and the exaggerated animations turn what should be scary moments into schlocky slapstick. And even if the animated blood splatter were less over the...
You're putting this... like, come on. You can't be showing these clips and putting these sound effects over it. I imagine a lot of you right now are screaming spoilers. Doesn't matter, all right? I don't even know when we're going to watch these fucking series, all right? If a few of them are spoiled, it's fine. We're not going to be watching them for the ages. But yeah, you can't be putting sound effects over this and then saying it's silly. You know, like, look how silly this death is. Blah! See, it's so silly. Like, come on.
The cartoon blood itself would still feel obviously fake in the same way as the prop blood in schlockbusters like Final Destination or The Evil Dead. And that's part of what makes those movies entertaining to watch as comedies. And look, I love this kind of over-the-top schlocky violence. I had a lot of fun with last summer's Angels of Death precisely because of its comedically grim tone. But even though I like it, if I'd come to that show or another looking to be scared, I would have walked away disappointed. Laughing at a botched attempt at horror is still a hell of a lot better than being bored by it, though. Corpse Party, the video game, is one of my favorite horror titles ever. There are moments in it that straight up gave me nightmares when I play it, and that still play in the back of my head sometimes. But the 4-episode Corpse Party OVA that came out in 2013 only served to put me to sleep. A very restful, uninterrupted sleep. And on the face of it, that seems backwards, right? A top-down pixelated RPG Maker game with only a smattering of CG artwork depicting its scariest scenes should not be more affecting than a fully animated interpretation.
I feel like this literally goes against exactly what Mother's Basement said at the beginning here, right? Because Mother's Basement literally said that the freaking earlier that, how do I word this? Mother's Basement literally said that the animation was like, you would never, like, the animation was going to ruin it. That animation was never going to be able to properly convey those serious moments unless it was some top budget studio, right? But then in the next breath says that a top-down 8-bit style horror game was one of the most terrifying things they've seen. That's a complete contradiction. This is what I said. I don't think the animation is that important necessarily. Again, like using your own example, you can scare people with the most simplest of designs. It just takes a little bit more work.
Interpretation that throws all of the gruesome imagery right in your face, and yet it is. And to be fair, a big part of that is just a result of it being a game. When your actions play a direct role in determining the fate of your protagonist and you're forced to navigate the horrors with them.
I agree. Games, I would say, like the scariest game is scarier than the scariest movie, because if you immerse yourself in the scariest game, you're the fucking character. I've been scared at games more than I've been scared at movies. On the scarier level. Overall, I've been way more scared at movies, but on like a heightened scared level, games get me way more, man.
That does a lot to ratchet up the tension, even for a game that looks like this. And that's something that a lot of the anime adaptations that I've talked about thus far suffer from. They are inherently more passive experiences than their source material. With video games, obviously you need to actively engage with the threats faced by your player character in order to progress. And even with manga and books, you need to take in the detail of every panel or paragraph and turn the page of your own volition to find out what happens next in the story. But regardless of what you do and how much or how little attention you pay to it, an anime that you're watching will keep on playing. And that distinction makes a world of difference in how effective certain narratives can be. Junji Ito.
This is why you need suspense. Suspense is one of the key elements to a good scare. And sometimes you don't even need a payoff. The payoff is never as important as the suspense and tension building is.
Uzumaki, for instance, is a story about how curiosity can be twisted into obsession.
I feel like this was the one.
Destroy you. And that is just a lot more frightening to someone who has to make a conscious choice to turn the page and see what will happen next than someone who's sitting on a couch while a story happens at them. Likewise, some of the most affecting parts of Corpse Party are moments where you follow your gamer instincts to seek out hidden lore and end up driving your character mad in the process. Without that active involvement from the audience, these concepts aren't nearly as effective. Corpse Party sucks as an anime, and I think that Uzumaki probably would too. It certainly sucked as a live-action film, though that's at least in part a consequence of its laughable production values. Yeah, live-action horror films are obviously passive too, but with real actors and a mix of good practical and digital effects, it's a lot easier to make the horrific elements of
good old Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, man. That's my boy Bruce Campbell right there. It was Uzumaki, wasn't it? I like the way the guy predicted it would be a bad anime, and everyone told me it was awful.
Which can make up the difference with the strengths of those other media. Horror anime, as we've established, just can't do the same thing. Anime needs its audience to use a bit of imagination to close that gap in fidelity. And so do books, manga, and games. Indeed, I'd argue that just imagining how Uzumaki's spiral creatures would move and sound, or what the pixelated halls of Heavenly Host Elementary would look like in real life, helps the horror of those works to seep deeper into your mind. But anime doesn't require the same level of mental engagement as a game or even a book, so it can't expect viewers to have such active imaginations. Anime is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to horror. It can't practically achieve the level of fidelity needed to create convincingly disturbing imagery, and it offers up a little too much visual and audible information to stimulate the imagination properly. It doesn't engage people.
That is a problem as well, is the audio. Like, there is, like, anime struggles with this. The best anime I've seen that, like, build tension, like Monster. Monster, in my opinion, is a horror anime. No one ever talks about it as a horror anime, but it absolutely is. Some of the best tension and like, suspense-building moments I've seen in anime are in Monster. And you know why? Because they don't rely on dialogue. And most anime that you will see, there's no silent moments. Everyone is talking, they're constantly talking, everything, and they're just vomiting out their mind. They walk into a room, and instead of there being, like, a good horror, walk into a room, look around the room. Just that silence alone is enough to build a tiny bit of tension. The anime version would go like this. I can't see anyone in this room. The room is completely empty. There's no bodies, there's no people, there's nothing. It's just a boring, empty room. And it's like, you don't need that. You don't fucking need that, but that's what anime will do.
People in a place where it can easily scare them through traditional means like monsters or gore. But that doesn't mean that it can't find ways to strike fear into them where they are engaged with it. School Live is one of the few anime I can think of that really caught me off guard and spooked me, though the fear sadly didn't last. After a first episode of what appears to be disposable, happy-go-lucky moe club show nonsense, the curtain is pulled back, and first episode spoiler warning, it's revealed that
what do you mean first episode spoiler warning? Right. Skip.
there's potential here to turn Yuki's unstable mind into a threat, or to turn the tables on the audience and question whether it's healthy for them to be using moe as an escape from reality themselves, but the show never really taps into that. Instead, that premise really just ends up being a neat gimmick for an otherwise standard zombie story. Last year gave us a show that did run a little further with a subversive moe premise, Happy Sugar Life, a take on the disturbingly common older woman in love with a child concept that plays it up as the psychological horror scenario that it truly is. Happy Sugar Life didn't grab me when I watched it personally, and I haven't seen anything past episode 2, but I have some friends who were obsessed with it and who insist that it's one of the most chilling psychological thrillers they've seen. And from what I did see, I can say that I really like the concept behind its protagonist.
What the hell? Well,
she's a psychopath in the guise of a cute anime schoolgirl who uses her innate moe appeal to manipulate and destroy people. Again, we see the show taking one of the tropes that appeals most to the standard male anime viewer and twisting it into something horrifying to put them on edge. Happy Sugar Life didn't give me the scare that I was waiting for, unfortunately, but a new show from this season finally did. Whiz, the sequel to Handshakers, whose very existence proves that the universe is a cold and uncaring void. But also, The Promised Neverland is off to a really I almost punned there. I mean to say, The Promised Neverland is all.
I want to watch The Promised Neverland, so I might have to skip past this. One. I wish he would have like more skip warnings. I'm gonna skip past it. Hopefully nothing pops up. Skip. This is a lot of this video. Alright, we're past it. Fucking hell, that went on for ages. Alright, well, we just skipped a huge portion of this fucking video. This is another anime I don't want spoiled for me. A bit of a pain in the ass. I think we just skipped ahead like 2 minutes. So, again, if you want to check them out for yourself, go. I honestly don't feel like... I feel like that this... Like, the problem with horror anime looks at what we have now as horror anime. But where I completely disagree with Mother's Basement is I don't think it's impossible to create one. And I feel like Mother's Basement's kind of lean that way, saying like, anime is caught between a rock and a hard place with these difficulties and it's hard to do this. I really don't agree with that. And I use his own case in point about the video game. And although you're immersed in the video game, there's still a quality thing there. And you can be immersed in an anime. Like, it's not hard, but you need to get rid of your tropes. That's the problem. And anime won't do that. Even my favorite anime in the whole world have the classic anime stereotypes and tropes, and that's where you will lose the suspense of a horror anime. You need silence, you need tension, you need to build up scenes. There needs to be an element of loneliness. The scariest movies that are like horror movies isolate people. There needs to be an isolation. And I don't just mean an isolation like someone goes one way, you go another way. I mean complete isolation. You need to be immersed in the person's mind, that you are isolated alongside them while things are going on. And those isolation moments are the scary moments. But you can't have the character walking around and talking and having that broken up. You need to have the right soundtrack, an eerie backing soundtrack as well. Don't overdo it. That's the main thing. Don't overdo it. Horror is scariest when it's simplest.
The puppet theater presentation does actually do an effective job of prompting the audience to imagine the finer details of its horror stories, and its first 2 seasons managed to be genuinely spooky, though it goes a little downhill from there. And Aku no Hana shows how rotoscoping could be used to give a series an uncomfortable, uncanny valley vibe. A zombie anime that takes advantage of that approach could really work. There's also potential in embracing the more surreal and trippy aspects of animation. I know that when I was younger, the nightmare sequences in Winnie the Pooh, Dumbo, and the Brave Little Toaster freaked me out with their unnatural twisting of reality. And obviously they don't spook me anymore, but who's to say that a serious attempt at a more mature take on that concept couldn't be effective? And then of course, there's always the chance that another work of psychological horror with a strong screenplay like Shiki could come along and keep me up at night. The point of this video is not to say that anime can never be scary scary or horror anime needs to do these specific things to work. There are likely thousands of things that I can't even imagine yet in anime and animation in general that could scare the bejesus out of me. And I'm excited to see some new shows taking new approaches. I want to see more
I will also say the main thing with horror anime as well, like the horror TV shows, horror movies, is to get a true scare, it needs to be relatable. Like, it doesn't need to have relatable element. No, how do I word this? It does. So, for example, you can be terrifying with aliens, even though we don't see aliens just wandering around Earth. You can still be terrifying. You need to be able to see the story as realistic. That's the main thing. You need to be able to be in it. So if you're going to have a scary anime, you need to be able to connect with it on some level. It can't be too far detached from reality.
Studios start experimenting to find more of them. Right now, horror anime isn't really all that scary, but there's no reason to think that it couldn't be one day. This video was brought to you by
I agree. I don't know if that's the end of the video. I think it is. It's the end of the video. I agree. Shout out Mother's Basement. Shout out. I apologize I had to skip so much. I think overall we only skipped about 4 minutes. And the video is 19 minutes long. But there's no way I'm just going to spoil anime, especially horror anime, when I do plan on watching these. Obviously, the channel's controlled by the community, so I don't know when I'll watch them, but I do want to watch them. Yeah, I don't know. What would you guys say is the scariest anime you've ever seen? What would you say? And what do you say is the best horror anime you've ever seen? Doesn't necessarily need to be for a scary reason, just one you enjoyed significantly. I will never be in a position where I'm allowed to create any kind of horror medium. It's never going to happen, which is a shame, because it'd be really cool. It is actually one of my dreams in life. It's like a bucket list dream. I've got 2 actually. I want to act in something one day. You know, just like one scene I want to act, whether it's a YouTube video or anything. I just kind of want to just act in one thing. Doesn't like whatever it is. I think that'd be really fun. But my like ultimate like random dream I've had forever is I've always wanted to create a horror story, like a horror anime, a horror story. I've never written anything horror like on a big sense, but I used to write horror short stories all the time. And one of my favorite things I used to do was writing a horror movie intro, because I feel like the intro is the most important part of any horror movie. The beginning scene is so integral to how you're going to feel throughout that entire film. Take something like Insidious, for example. Insidious does it so well, so simple. In Insidious, there's nothing. This is not a spoiler. This is literally the beginning. There's nothing scary in the opening sequence of the movie. It's about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. And all you do is the opening credits, just showing you the actors' names, is you go around an empty house in the dark. And you're just a camera. You've got the music playing in the background that's getting louder and louder. And you're just a camera going down these hallways and these corridors and down the stairs and this empty house in the dark. And it's terrifying. It's so good. It's genius. So simple. So terrifying. Because immediately you put yourself in that character's shoes. And that's why I think Insidious is such a scary movie, is because you are immediately, from the beginning, looking at the entire movie through the lens of the eyes of the characters. You are there. You are in their mind with them going through this experience. And the opening credits does that. Immerses you in it. Look at the famous sinister attic scene. To this day, considered one of the most disturbing scenes ever in like horror movies, and nothing bad really happens. No gore is shown, nothing happens, but everything that is shown is terrifying, and the blanks you fill in with your own mind are terrifying. That is another really good example. Even like talking about these ones is making me feel uncomfortable. Like, they are very good scenes, and I feel like that is where anime could really shine. There's 2 ways it could shine. Either with the most messed up body horror you've ever seen, because animation can take you places normal movies can't, or simplifying it. Show the audience something they've never seen before. A dumbed down, cut out, simple version of a horror anime. You know, like, show them that. It doesn't need to be overly complicated. It just needs to have a good story. And start with a scary opening. You know, that's what you want. I do think that horror anime could kickstart a real fan base if it just started with a slasher one. It doesn't need to be scary, just needs to be fun. Needs to be intense, needs to be fun. A slasher anime could be so good. Just take something like Scream, take that concept, put it in an anime. Just a single season, 12-part series about a town and a killer and trying to unmask the killer. Done. That's all you need to do. And that will kickstart a small fan base if it's done well. Slasher horror is what pretty much started the mainstream horror scene. Obviously, you could argue that you go further back to like Bram Stoker's and the more like classical sort of horror characters, which is true. The idea of like supernatural beings and fantasy beings is what started horror. That's where the horror stories all came from. But slasher is what mainstreamed horror because it puts you in a situation and it adds that element of mystery. I definitely think that could be something good. Anyway, that's my rambles over. I really enjoyed this video because I feel like it makes you look at what could be a horror anime and could be good. I imagine most of you watching this right now have got your own ideas as well. So let me know them. Put them in the comment section and let me know what anime you think I would enjoy and what your favorite horror anime is. I hope you enjoyed this reaction. Thank you so much for watching. Shout out Mother's Basement. Link in the description. Like and subscribe, and you right there will see me in the next video.